that the mind is not the brain, and the mind is not consciousness. What is the correct way to understand this? Thank you, Ajahn.
Well, there's some different perspectives on this. Yeah, correct, the brain and the mind are not the same thing. The brain is part of the body, the physical body, Rupa Dhamma. You could say the brain is the servant of the mind. The brain keeps the body going, the nervous system, the ability to absorb information through our senses. So the brain is obviously a vital organ, but the mind is the quality of knowing, just a natural quality that exists, the ability to know. And we say that the mind knows wrongly when it's conditioned by ignorance. Ignorance of the Four Noble Truths, unawareness, lack of mindfulness and wisdom. Then the mind knows wrongly, and the way it manifests is with a sense of self. So we all have a mind, but then the unenlightened mind arises with a sense of self because of the lack of understanding, lack of wisdom, lack of mindfulness. So an enlightened person, an arahant, has a mind, but it's no longer conditioned by ignorance, avijja. There's no longer any craving or clinging, vedana. So they still have a body, they still have a mind, but that mind is now, we might say, free, liberated from defilement. And so that's nibbana, and they call nibbana the deathless. So there's no more karma being produced by an arahant, so no more fruits of karma, no more birth. So arahants don't get born again. Whereas the unenlightened person still has ignorance conditioning in their mind. Sense of self arises moment to moment, because mind, or we say consciousness, arises and ceases at every moment. But it arises with some ignorance for the unenlightened person. So you have a sense of self. So you have that sense, my mind, my thought, my feelings, I'm seeing, I'm hearing, tasting. And then we produce karma because of the sense of self. Because we produce karma through action, some good, some bad. We create a cycle of birth and death, of cause and result. Consciousness keeps getting conditioned with the sense of self, with the ignorance. It keeps happening over and over again. And when we die, it doesn't finish there. So when we die, the brain dies. No way around that. But consciousness, as long as it's conditioned by ignorance, craving, attachment, becoming, consciousness doesn't die. Consciousness goes on and arises in its next birth. So we call that rebirth. So good rebirth, maybe in heaven realm, Brahma realm, or human realm. Bad rebirth, animal realm, ghost realm, hell realm. What's happening is consciousness, according to karma, is arising in its new birth. And so the Buddha, on the night of his enlightenment, found out that he has been born countless lifetimes, and other people, every other unenlightened person is the same, has been born and died so many times. Whatever suffering you've experienced this life, you've already experienced it before. This is like a replay, a rematch. So it's, if you think this suffering is bad, if you have any suffering, if you think it's bad, you've already had it before. Maybe you even had worse suffering in the past. Maybe this is already better than before. or if someone is unfortunately caught into their greed, anger and delusion, maybe they create the causes for consciousness to arise in a lower realm next life, so next life they have more suffering than this life. So this is consciousness. It's something that is conditioned. The arahant has cultivated the Noble Eightfold Path to the point where they see and transcend the conditioning process, so there's no more karma being made for them, no more attachment to self, no more ignorance. They've penetrated the Four Noble Truths, there's no more birth. So at death, we don't know. If you haven't experienced Nibbana, you can't say where the arahant goes, where the mind goes. But what you can say is there's no more attachment to self, no more cause for rebirth, so gone. Nibbana. Maybe that will do for now.
Ajahn, what is the most important factor to practice in order to be a stream enterer?
Whatever the Dhamma that is appropriate for cultivating the path, Marga, is what's appropriate to become a stream enterer. So, in respect to Sila, we're cultivating 5 precepts. The other day somebody in Melbourne told me they used to really struggle to keep the 5 precepts. Now they keep them quite automatically. It's normal for them to keep the 5 precepts. They don't have to think about it. They don't lie, they don't drink, they don't kill animals. They're faithful to their husband. It's just normal for them to keep the 5 precepts. That's a very important progress in their practice. Sotapannas keep the 5 precepts quite naturally. They don't struggle with it anymore, they just do it naturally because they train their mind to remove the intention to kill, steal, commit acts of sexual misconduct, lie, or take intoxicants. Sotapanna has unwavering faith in Buddha Dhamma Sangha because they practice to the point where they prove to themselves that what the Buddha taught is true. They may not have completed the path to Nibbana, Sotapanna is the first stage of enlightenment, but they have enough insight, enough experience to know what the Buddha teaches is true. So there's no more doubt. There's no more wrong grasping, no more superstitious belief of the Sotapanna. They understand from their experience what is the cause of suffering that is to be abandoned. And they have enough insight to recognize defilements coming up and abandon them. They still have defilements arising, but they abandon them because they recognize them for what they are, the cause of suffering. The unenlightened person, not yet Sotapanna, is still maybe. Sometimes you see defilements, sometimes you don't. But you think you're doing the right thing, or you have the right thought, the right view, but then later you realize, oh, I'm still caught into my attachment to something, some greed, some anger. Sotapanna has reached a point where they have a lot of clarity in their mind. Always one part of the mind is focused on abandoning defilement for Nibbana. No more doubt about it. So Sotapanna has firm faith in Buddha Dhamma Sangha. They are cultivating the path, so they're not lazy. Some Sotapannas may be more energetic than others, but Sotapannas, they're not lazy because they're on the path to Nibbana, maximum 7 more lifetimes. Maybe just 3 lifetimes, maybe just 1 lifetime. But they're assured enlightenment because they've already removed the causes of the mental defilements. So they have no more wrong view, wrong beliefs, wrong views. Have no more stinginess. So the Sotapanna are very generous with their time, their knowledge, and their whatever wealth, possessions they have. So monks we have a rule. If somebody, a layperson, is a Sotapanna, we have to be careful what we ask from them because they never say no. Sotapanna has faith in Buddha Dhamma Sangha. They see monks or nuns, they know they need help, they'll give help. If they ask, they'll give. Unscrupulous person could take advantage of that. If you knew someone has no more stinginess, then you give. Some people have to deal with that, don't they? Well, what do you do with your relative who just keep saying give me more. So Sotapanna has a variety of qualities. So that's one way you can look at your practice. Are you still stingy? Do you still break the precepts, or at least have the intention to break the precepts? Do you still have doubts about Buddha Dhamma Sangha and the path? Do you still fall into wrong views? So Sotapanna still has some greed, some anger coming up in their experience, but it's already not so coarse, because they're not breaking precepts. So they may have greed, but they're not going to break a precept because of their greed. They may have anger, but they won't break a precept because of their anger. So maybe you meet a Sotapanna and you already think they're enlightened because they're a very peaceful, wise person already. But they'll know for themselves inside they still have some mental defilements arising. But they have the happiness of knowing it's only a matter of time before all those mental defilements are gone. So the Buddha said for the Sotapanna, the amount of suffering left is compared with when the Buddha spread his fingers on the ground. He said, what's more, the dirt under my fingertips, my fingernails, or the dirt all on the ground in the whole world? Obviously, the dirt under the fingernails is less. So that's like comparing the suffering of an unenlightened person who has to be born and die endless times, and Sotapanna who has a little bit more birth, a little bit more suffering, but only this much. So they have a lot of happiness. So even if they're ill, or somebody doesn't like them, or they meet with some accident or some problem, the mind is always has some happiness there. They're never reborn in the lower realms, so they never make the karma to be reborn as a ghost or an animal or hell won't be. So if you're with a Sotapanna, you're always going to be feeling safe. They're not going to hurt you or harm you. So you have a very relaxed, good feeling when you're with a Sotapanna. Even more when you're with an Arahant. Already a Sotapanna is going to be a very reliable, safe person to be with. So very different to the world. So for yourself, you can compare your mind with some of these teachings and descriptions of the Sotapanna, and you can see what more you need to do. When you get up in the morning and you think, I could meditate or I could sleep another hour. Sotapanna will probably get up and meditate. Or your friend says, can I have one of those when you've got some nice food? Can I have some of that? You know, it's mine. Maybe not Sotapanna yet. Or your friend says, come on, let's go and get drunk. No. So these are simple ways just to have a look at your practice and see where you're at in your practice.
Still questions here. Dear Ajahn, what is the difference between Bun, translated here as merit, and Barami, translated here as prestige?
That brings up a good point. Barami translated as prestige. So often we look at the word Barami in a worldly sense. So we say somebody who becomes wealthy from business, or some politician with power and influence, or celebrity, or somebody we say has Barami, they have prestige. But that's not the Buddhist description of Barami. Barami refers to the 10 spiritual perfections, which the Buddha perfects to become a Buddha. And the Buddha actually perfects them on 3 levels, not just ordinary level, say like an arahant, but on the 3 levels, we say ordinary Bharami, and then Upa Bharami, intermediate level, and then Paramata Bharami. So you probably heard some of the previous life stories of the Buddha. He might sacrifice his own life to help somebody. That's like Paramata Bharami. You're willing to sacrifice your life to help another person. Or somebody who sacrifices one of their organs, or somebody gives their kidney in an organ transplant. They're still alive, but they donate their kidney to a relative or friend. That's Upabarami. Very difficult to do. You just imagine if I sat here and said, who's going to give me your organ or your kidney? Not many people will be ready for that. That's, it's understandable, but it's a sign of attachment, isn't it? The Buddha has perfected every Bharami on the level of Paramata. So for Sila, for Nekama, for wisdom, for Dhamma, for Aditsacha, Aditana, for patience, for Virya, all these 10 paramis, he's sacrificed even his own life for them to perfect them, to go forward in his practice, for the good of himself, for the good of others. So Bharami is not just prestige, it's spiritual perfections, spiritual qualities that support enlightenment. And really they're used with Buddha, but they refer to any of us. We can perfect these 10 qualities in the pursuit of the Noble Eightfold Path. We're not going to become a Buddha. Maybe one of you is a Bodhisattva in hiding, maybe. I don't know, you have to know for yourself. But more likely, if we become enlightened, we'll become a Sāvaka, disciple of the Buddha. So the disciples of the Buddha, their paramis are not quite as perfected on the 3 levels as a Buddha. They haven't been doing it as long. They still have the same enlightenment experience, Nibbana, but they don't become a Buddha, they become a student of the Buddha. So there's a certain difference there. Bun, merit, means literally goodness. The Buddha talked about 10 actions, skillful actions which develop merit. So practice of Dhamma, generosity, Sila, moral integrity, Bhavana, what we've been doing on the retreat, Samatha Bhavana, developing calm, Vipassana Bhavana, developing insight and wisdom. So that's 3 ways we make merit, but then there's also the merit we make through helping out. So Ryan is on the committee of Palelai temple. He does a lot of good work for the temple. That's an example of somebody making merit, call it Vayavachamani, doing good works for the community, for helping the Sangha, helping the temple, helping society in a good way. We have Anamodana, we make merit and we dedicate this merit. So you maybe make offerings or you meditate and you dedicate this to your deceased loved ones. And we can also make merit recognizing that other people are making merit. So it's like free merit. So you're all making merit doing your meditation. And I can sit here and go, ooh, you're making so much good karma, you're making so much merit. So I'm making merit, rejoicing in the merit that you're making. Free. Free money. Or maybe you see someone else offering some food to the monks, or doing a donation, or helping somebody sick, the poor, or somebody. All you do is witness it, but your mind rejoices in the merit that they're making. So you get merit as well. Easy, 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 easy. And obviously it's the opposite of jealousy. Some people, they can't help it because they're still very attached to the self, very competitive. they see someone else doing good, and instead of rejoicing in it and making merit, they go, not that guy again. Why are they always at the front doing an offering, making a mix of it? I don't know what you would think, but if you're jealous, you're like that. They're always making merit. Why is it always them? Why not me? Whatever way it comes up is jealousy. That's the opposite. You're not rejoicing in the good that is being done. Or you're meditating and maybe you hear someone's question and say, Ajahn, I had really good samadhi, what should I do now? And you're sitting there saying, I never get good samadhi. What you should do is go, I'm so happy, at least one person has got good samadhi here. And you're happy for them. And you rejoice in their merit. It's one less problem for the world, isn't it? If someone has good meditation, good for them. Even if it's not you, it doesn't matter. It's good for the world. So, making merit and then rejoicing in merit is more merit. And other ways to make merit. My brain is turning off. We make merit by listening to Dhamma. So you're all making merit now, listening to Dhamma. I'm making merit by giving Dhamma, teaching the Dhamma. So people like to, in the old days, less now because of the internet, but in the old days everyone liked to print Dhamma books, offer money to print Dhamma books. We give the Dhamma books away, we make merit, we make the Dhamma of the Buddha or the teacher, we make merit printing Dhamma books. Or we give some words of Dhamma that we've heard to our children or our friend. That's still giving Dhamma. Or there's the formal way like this, giving talks, guidance in meditation. It's all making Dhamma, making merit through the Dhamma, listening to Dhamma, giving Dhamma. And then the final merit is straightening your views, the way you look at your experience, your beliefs, your views, the way you view the world is making merit. If you listen to the Dhamma and then you practice, your views start to fall in line with the truth, then you're making very important merit. Because what causes the suffering is having wrong views, and then you do wrong courses of action, wrong beliefs, wrong speech, wrong action, and we cause more suffering for ourselves, for others. So one of the greatest kind of merits is to straighten your views in line with Dhamma. It doesn't mean to say you have to know a lot of Dhamma. Some people do, they've read a lot, and they remember a lot of Dhamma, and that's my merit, of course. But some people don't. They don't learn a lot of Dhamma, they've heard enough to practice. But when they view things, they understand what is good karma, bad karma, what is the right course of action, what is the wrong course of action. So, if you straighten your views, you become a blessing for everyone else because you give good advice to your family, your friends, people around you. You won't lead them in the wrong direction. And this is important to have people like this in life because if somebody is in a position of responsibility, like a parent, or someone at work, or someone in society, and they've got wrong views, well, they can do a lot of damage. They lead people in the wrong way. So these are all ways we make merit. So merit, sometimes we use the words interchangeably. They don't mean exactly the same, merit and parami, but what we're referring to is these kind of qualities that we develop through our practice. And when we look at someone, sometimes we say, oh, that person has a lot of merit. It doesn't necessarily mean they're enlightened. They may be, or maybe there's someone who's got a lot of power and it brings back a lot of good things to them because they've sacrificed a lot for others. But maybe they still have some mental defilements. They're not an enlightened person yet, but they made a lot of merit. So one way they describe people with merit is that a person who's made a lot of merit doesn't get angry easily. Because if you've made a lot of merit, you have a lot of happiness. You forgive people easily. You you let go easily because your mind returns to merit all the time. So you get a lot of good thoughts, skillful thoughts. So maybe something happens that prompts anger. If they're not enlightened, they may get anger arising, but then they let go quickly. Because they don't hold on to anger, because their mind is more used to being with meritorious, good thoughts. Bharami is the same. Somebody who's perfected Bharami or practiced a lot of Bharami means those qualities have become deeply embedded in their mind, their consciousness. And Bharami will tend to follow you life after life. Merit will as well. So they have a certain similarity. And someone with Bharami, maybe they meet with disaster, but they come out of it. And it doesn't affect their mind too much. Even the Buddha, even an Arahant may meet with some difficulty in their life, but they don't let it drag their mind down into suffering. Someone with merit, someone with Bharami, they don't suffer so much because they have all these qualities to support them. So you're making Bharami now. When you meditate, you learn to sit meditation and concentrate on the breath, and put up with some aches and pains, and your mind is a bit all over the place. You're making Bharami, and you'll see it comes back to you. Maybe in the future you meditate another retreat, and you learn more meditation, you do more, and you make it easier. Because Bharami will produce good results and will help the practice go easier. What's an example of Bharami? Well, I mean, Bharami does sometimes come out in the world, so sometimes people with Bharami do get worldly success as well. The fruits of their past good karma come back to them, so people help them. People offer things to them and give them support. They may become famous, well known. Those things may happen, but it's not absolutely synonymous or the same as being Bharami, because I know some monks who never got very famous, but they were arahants, so they had really good Bharami and good meditation, but they weren't very well known. So prestige, fame, fortune are not necessarily the same thing as Bharami. Somebody can have Bharami, but they can be quite unknown. But their Bharami will come out, so like some of those forest monks who are way in the forest, not many people know them, they meditate, and straight away they get peaceful. It's like, oh, first time they meditate, jackpot, straight into samadhi. Bharami. Done it before. So they may get samadhi quickly, they get quick results in their practice because they've done it before. They have Bharami, they have a whole range of qualities ready to help them in from previous lives. Now they're ready to help them in this life. Or you may have heard of the nun Meiji Gao, who was considered an arahant, disciple of Ajahn Kalyano. When she was only 16, Ajahn Kalyano taught her meditation. She sat down, she meditated, and she sat all night, entered jhana. No sleepiness, no worries, very peaceful, and she even had a very clear image of herself as a corpse. But she's not scared by that, she's not caught out or upset by that. She understands this is just a Dhamma image expressing the impermanence of the body. We call that Bharami. Some people that have been meditating for many years are still not anything. They're still building Bharami, so you have to keep going. If you haven't yet got good results, or the results you want from your practice, just keep going. You're building Bharami. And there's many ways we do that. Another example, there's a monk in Thailand, used to live in Thailand, called Krumasivichai. So some of you have been to Chiang Mai. You go to Chiang Mai city, you'll see the mountain Doi Sutek, and it's got the golden pagoda on top with the Buddha relics and the winding road up that mountain. That mountain was built by a monk, Kulvasivijai, with all the other monks and lay supporters, volunteers, because he saw it would be good for the future of the city and for that part of Thailand to have a pagoda with Buddha relics on top of the mountain protecting everybody. And he said, we're going to build a road up this mountain. And all the government people said, can't be done. Because this is 100 years ago. Can't be done. But Kulvasivijai had Bharati. So he said, well, we're going to do it anyway. We're going to have a go. So one thing with somebody with Bharati is people like to follow. They trust. This guy knows what he's doing. So Kulvasivijai said, we're going to do it. Whoever's free, you can come and make some merry, we're going to make a road up the hill. So the local government said, no, we're not. They had all the machines. So they just did it with volunteers, hoes, jungle, shovels and tools. And they started building a road by hand up the hill through the jungle. And everyone said, no, you can't do it, it won't work, it won't succeed. But it did. And then the elephants carried up rubble and rocks, and all kinds of people came to help. People would finish work at 3, 4 p.m. They wouldn't go out having fun, they'd go and help Kulvasivijai build a road up the hill. Only when they got towards the top and the government thought, oh, they're going to do it. Oh, okay, well, we'll come and help. So the government come and help and they get a bit of credit, but it's right at the end. Beforehand, it was just volunteers. And someone with Bharati, they can do something like that and get everyone together working, helping finish the job. Because of Bharati. When you have Bharati, you have stamina, you have patience, you have effort, energy, you have wisdom to see what needs to be done, get the job done. That's Bharati. So it could be for your own practice or it could be for helping everyone else. Next question. We're not going very fast with these questions, are we? Never mind, we have it.
Dear Lord Paul, why is noble silence important during meditation or retreat? What are the effects of talking or whispering? Is it disturbing others who are meditating?
Number one is disturbing you. If you're talking, you're disturbing yourself because you tend to be less mindful when you talk. And we talk all day, we've already talked quite enough. So sometimes it's good to pause the talking, bring your attention inwards and see the internal conversation of your mind rather than always going out to other people. So you have to understand, noble silence doesn't mean to say you look at other people who are talking with aversion. It's not about criticizing other people. We're simply giving the best conditions possible, because if there's a lot of people together in one place, the temptation is there to talk, isn't it? It's so easy to talk. So we reduce the amount of talking so that the attention comes inwards. When the attention comes inwards, you see your internal dialogue, and then you can use your mindfulness and your wisdom to say, well, these thoughts I have, do I need to tell everybody what I'm thinking? Some thoughts may be very important, and so even in noble silence, occasionally you have to say something. It's urgent, okay, you accept that. But then you'll notice a lot of your thoughts are very unimportant, random. So if you're not going to say anything about these thoughts, you're teaching yourself, oh, I can let them go. So it means what you do in your retreat, not just when you're meditating, like sitting cross-legged here, but when you're outside meeting other people. If you keep noble silence, it means you're letting go of thoughts as you go through the day. And it means your meditation will progress further, your mindfulness will be sharper. You'll see your thoughts more clearly, because when they come up, you may have the thought, I want to say something. But then you undertake a noble silence, so it's kind of precept. It's like an additional precept you keep. So you have the desire to speak, but then you say, oh, I'm not speaking. So I'll just let this thought go. And you realize a lot of those thoughts are not very important, so you can afford to let them go. You become a little bit better at letting go of some of those thoughts. So your meditation will progress, you might get deeper into samadhi. You're not going to get into samadhi by talking. Talking has a place, even in Dhamma practice. This is talking, isn't it? We have Q&A, we ask questions, we listen to answers, we discuss the Dhamma. So it has a role to play to improve our understanding, of course. But when you're meditating, you have to let go of all those thoughts and the desire to speak. You have to let it go, don't you? You can't get to Nibbana by talking. You have to put the thoughts down and go back to the breath. And that's part of the mechanism of meditation, isn't it? If a thought comes up, you see it, you let it go. Another thought, you see it, you let it go. When you're talking, you're not letting go, you're acting on those thoughts. So you're reinforcing the whole process of thinking, verbalizing, speaking, going out to the world. And we all know, the more we talk, the more problems we have. When you talk more, you have more chance of misunderstanding, distraction, losing your mindfulness, jealousies, competition, sadness, happiness, excitement, boredom. It increases the effects of the mental defilements the more we talk. So it's not like Buddhism has anything against talking or speaking, but in a retreat it's a good opportunity just to let go and observe yourself. If there's nothing necessary to say, then you just let go. Because you'll notice when you're meditating you can't settle down a lot of it because you have another thought and your mind is saying this thought is important, let's think it through. Solve this problem, there's this job I'm going to do later, I better think about it now. There's always an excuse to think more, isn't there? And so your mind doesn't settle down, the mindfulness doesn't become very strong because you keep getting caught up into your thinking. So the noble silence is just an extra rule to help us and to help everyone else, because if everyone does it, then the place becomes quieter and less distraction. As I said, be careful because we're not Dhamma policemen. And you see someone else talking and we should fine each other. If you or punish each other, if you are caught talking, you're going to have to chant 180 souls tonight. That's what people do for when they're on retreat during noble silence. If they want to speak, they chant louder. Do some chanting later today, maybe tonight, do extra chanting because you didn't speak to anyone, so you chant.
Yes, 2 questions. Ajahn, how strictly do we need to practice on Uposatha days? If I have a gathering on Uposatha day, is it advisable to skip the gathering or make up for the practice on another day? That's the first question. And the second one is, does one need to know or learn the Abhidhamma in order to gain insight or make progress in one's meditation?
Well, today is it's not Uposatha day, but it's the observance day, isn't it? So this is a really good way to spend your Uposatha day on your observance day. Come into the monastery, listen to the Dhamma, meditate, keep precepts. People have been doing this since the time of the Buddha right up to this day. So if you can, that's the best. Of course, Uposatha days and observance days often fall on a weekday and you may have work to do with things. Our calendar doesn't always follow the lunar calendar. You could try telling your boss, today is Uposatha day, I'm going to stay home and keep the precepts. The boss may not be impressed. In the old days they were, in the old days they allowed you, but not now. So sometimes you have to adapt. So you say, okay, I I can't keep the 8 precepts on the road of the day because I have to go to work, and I can't do my meditation or chanting or whatever because I have to work. So I'll do it on a Sunday or a free day or a holiday, public holiday. So you maybe these days we adapt a little bit and we find free time when we can. But you get the idea. The idea of the close of the day is a day that you dedicate your time, your energy to the Dhamma practice. So you may keep 8 precepts rather than 5. You've got more time, more energy today. I'll keep the 8 precepts. So that means maybe less distractions, less entertainment. So if you're ready, you can say, yes, today is my 8 precept day, whether it's a Buddha day or just a Sunday or a public holiday, whatever. And you tell your friends, today is my 8 precept day, I'm afraid I can't join that dinner party or that gathering. If you're ready, you can do that. And why can I say that? Because I've done this before. When I was a lay person, I had this very same problem. And I just got to the point where I'm just going to do my practice even if it means I miss certain events. And if you're doing it for the Dhamma practice, to further your Dhamma practice, who could criticize you for that? It's for a good cause. People will criticize you nevertheless, so you have to put up with that. But if you're sure of your intention, why not? So today is my Dhamma day. I'm not going to go to the Buddhist dinner party, not go shopping or do this, do that. If you're ready, you can do that. If it really doesn't work out, well, you just adapt and do the best you can. So sometimes you have a Dhamma catch-up day. So yesterday, Uposita, you had to go to the dinner party. So today is the day after Uposita, I'll call it my catch-up Dhamma day. So today I'll keep 8 precepts because I had to go to the dinner party yesterday. It's up to you how you do it. But ideally, the more effort you can put into your practice in these ways. If you can pick a day once a week, once a fortnight, whenever you can for Dhamma practice, why not? It's only going to help you become more disciplined. Same with retreats. Retreats are like the time you set aside for the Dhamma, and it will give you lasting benefit. What we learn here, the meditation you do, the Dhamma you hear, keeping precepts, a little bit more disciplined than normal. This will be helping your practice along for many weeks, months to come. And if you keep returning to retreat times or days like Uposita days when you give up to the Dhamma practice, your Dhamma practice is going to progress. When you look at people who have become enlightened, whether it's lay people who have progressed or monks and nuns, they do this. They give up to the Dhamma. So they set aside time for the Dhamma practice. Because they're giving priority to that, they're giving importance to that. But the exact details, you have to work it out with yourself, your own lifestyle, what will work, and see. Maybe it's a good excuse when you have a dinner party to go to that you don't want to go to. It's too positive and maybe it can help you.
Second question was, do we need to know that the Abhidhamma?
You don't have to learn the Abhidhamma. It's one of those kind of optional extras. We do need to learn a certain amount of basic Dhamma. Read some sutras, hear some talks, because you need some information how to practice, what to do, how to do it. And then from time to time we need to review it and remind ourselves what the Buddha taught. But how much depends on the person. Some people love to study, read. I know some monks who have read the whole Tipitaka, every single volume from cover to cover, in 3 months. They didn't sleep, just sat there reading. And they become very wise monks. So that's one way. Some people study a lot. Others study just a little bit, just enough to know how to meditate, understand the precepts, know the meditation, know how to reflect on Dhamma. And they just take a little bit of knowledge and they make it go a long way. And most people are somewhere in between. do some study, we listen, we read, and then we do some practice. So you get to know your character and what stimulates you in the Dhamma. And some people read the Abhidhamma or study the Abhidhamma courses because it stimulates their discernment and reasoning faculty. They find it interesting. It helps them to understand Dhamma. You also have to be honest, because some people study Abhidhamma and they seem to get more confused. You talk to them and you just don't know what they're talking about. So sometimes Dhamma can do that, and you get Dhamma overload. People have all these ideas and knowledge, but it doesn't come out very well. So you have to balance your study with practice. The purpose of study is to practice. It's not an end in itself. So you read the books in order to meditate, in order to keep precepts, meditate, develop your mind to let go of defilement. So if studying Abhidhamma helps you to practice better and let go of defilement better, then it can help you. If it doesn't, if it makes you more confused or more attached to the knowledge, some people get very attached and proud, and I know a lot more than them, then that may be an obstacle rather than an aid. So the practice is for freeing our mind from attachment and defilement. It's not for increasing defilement. That's the guideline.
Next question. When emotions arise during meditation, when Paul says change the object of meditation, are we saying that the emotion, let's say anger, becomes the object? How is that dealt with during the sit?
Well, as we meditate, there's many methods for training the mind. The number one priority is always to establish mindfulness and clear comprehension. Sati Sampajanya. As you establish Sati Sampajanya, then to contemplate or observe the three characteristics of phenomena. So if it's an emotion of anger, for example, first thing is know, because you're mindful, you can see that it arises and ceases. It's made up of feeling, pleasant feeling, tension. There's negative thoughts, negative perceptions, maybe it's backed by a view, a certain view that you have. All of these can become objects for your insight to see the impermanent, unsatisfactory and selfless nature of mental defilement. Mental defilements are not you. They may arise into your experience, but they're not you, they're not a person. They are mental states that come from ignorance. They come into your mind and then they go out of your mind. They're clearly not a self, not you, because if they were you, they'd be there all the time. That's a delusion, isn't it? You think you're always angry. If that's your experience, you might say, oh, I'm always angry. But even when you're angry, there's moments when you're not angry. There's thoughts and feelings come up and then they pass away, and sometimes very quick. Everyone knows it can come up in a flash. It can also disappear. So I assume at this very moment you're not angry. I hope. Because if you're angry, you'd probably be angry with me for talking too long. At this moment, if you're not angry, that is already proving to you that anger is impermanent and not self. It's just proving that point because it's not always in your mind. When you're mindful and you're training in discernment, maybe you can know that very quickly. As soon as anger arises, or any other emotion, sadness, happiness, whatever the emotion is, you can know it arises, it will cease. That's its nature. So already there's a detachment there in your mind. So it's like you step back from that emotion because you have enough mindfulness and insight to see that. But having said that, maybe as you're practicing bringing up mindfulness, you can't even establish very good mindfulness yet. You have a little bit of mindfulness and then you start thinking of angry thoughts again. Sometimes anger is very strong. So the Buddha also gave us other teachings. He said, well, you can also try replacing the anger by focusing on something good. So as a person, you're angry with this person, can you see this person in a good light? Remember something good about them, or sympathize with them, have compassion for them because they also have their suffering and you have your suffering. There are different reflections that may help you to understand that person and let go of your anger. So we call this factor replacement. You replace a negative emotion with a positive emotion. Anger replaced with kindness or compassion. Or greed, you bring up the reflection on impermanence. The thing you are greedy for, you contemplate the pleasure is only temporary. The object of my pleasure is temporary. It doesn't last. So you bring up a sense of contentment, seeing that thing is impermanent. It doesn't matter, I don't need it later, for example. Or you see the unattractive side of that thing that you are attached to. You have greed for food, and then you think, it goes in the body, comes mixed with the stomach juices, goes out the other end, the excrement, it's not that great after all. You can use these kind of reflections to pull your mind away from greed. So there's different ways to practice something. One is to replace the emotion with something better, the negative emotion with something better. Or if mindfulness is really strong and wisdom is present, you just see it as impermanent. Maybe that's enough. It's just a thought, arise, pass away, just a feeling, an emotion, arise, pass away. There are different approaches. It's not just one approach. You can experiment, but your aim is always to bring up and maintain mindfulness. So you'll see if your mindfulness is very continuous, anger may pop into your mind, and it's like you can't do anything. You just say, anger. You can let it go straight away because your mindfulness is strong. Maybe you're following the breath. And you're breathing in, breathing out, and a bit of anger arises, you know it, but you don't let it bother you. It's like a fly or something. Let it go. Or a bit of desire comes up, you think of something you want to do later, something that's enjoyable for you, you think about it, no, it's not important, you let it go very quick, because your mindfulness with the breathing is very strong. Or if you get really mindful and your mind absorbs into the breath, no thoughts are going to arise. You won't have any other emotions at that time. At that time, you just know the breath. Very peaceful, your mind is very happy. So it doesn't need anything else. This is what the Buddha called niramisa sukha. Happiness that doesn't depend on anything else. Like normally, the reason we feel a lot of stress is because we're always looking for something to make us happy. We want to literally look at something, hear something, taste something, touch something, think about something. We're looking for objects to bring us pleasure or distraction as well. But when your mindfulness is strong and retain some calm and samadhi, you don't need those things. You're getting internal happiness, kind of welling up. Compare it to like having a spring. I don't know if in Singapore they have springs, but in Australia they do like springs, like a mountain spring or a place where water bubbles up out of the ground all the time. It's just bubbling up. So if you're attaining some samadhi, you have this bubbling up of piti, sukha, you feel very happy, you have rapturous joy. And it seems to be self-sustaining. It's not dependent on having some external thing. It's just self-sustaining. So then you don't need all these other things to make you happy. So you're getting a taste of happiness that is not dependent on external objects. And that's going to change your view of life, isn't it? It's going to make you see that, oh, there's this other kind of happiness that's internal. I don't need a lot of other things to make me happy. It doesn't mean to say those other things are wrong, it just means they're lesser than this. And So you can apply that to anger as well. When I follow my angry thoughts and get angry and hold on to my angry thoughts and feelings, I'm suffering, I'm not happy. Better to let it go, come back to the breath, develop this mindfulness. And when mindfulness is there, you also tend not to get so much anger anyway, because you start to become more relaxed and you tend to look at things in a better light. So if you have a meditation session and you become quite mindful and peaceful, maybe something that used to make you angry will happen. You'll remember something, or something outside of you will happen that would normally make you angry, but it won't. You can let go of your anger very well because your mind is peaceful inside. Maybe your friend comes along and says something that annoys you. Normally you would get a little bit annoyed by what they say, but now because you have this inner happiness, you're like, it's okay, never mind, let it go. That's a very important experience to have, because it teaches you something. Oh, anger, I can let it go, I don't need to hold on to it. I know there's many things that make us angry that are quite difficult to let go, of course, but still you're learning how to let go.
So what is the retreatant who requested to ask a question live? So can we start with that?
We can, for the brave retreatant.
I got two questions in my mind. One is on Jhana, and the second question on liberation. The question is quite when Jhana, which is the right concentration, it wasn't the four part, like the right and four part, right concentration Jhana. So if we do the first Jhana, if we then move from the first Jhana to insight or discernment meditation, meaning this vipassana. And we just move from the first jhana and go straight up to the discernment meditation. If not by yes, not as practice.
Yes, you don't even need jhana to practice vipassana. The important thing is to be mindfulness, and perhaps as your mindfulness becomes stronger and better practiced, you may attain jhana, you may attain all four jhanas. But there'll be a period when you don't have jhana. So you're clearly not in jhana when you're moving around or talking, because to be in jhana you need to be still. So clearly vipassana doesn't take place in jhana. So the forest Ajahns use these terms Kanika Samadhi, Upajara Samadhi. Sometimes people are not happy because these are really from the commentaries more than from the Tripitaka, the words of the Buddha, but still they're useful concepts that you have what we call momentary samadhi, where your mind gathers together. So you're practicing mindfulness of breathing, and your mindfulness becomes more continuous with the breath. The factors of samadhi come up. Vitakka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekaggata, the 5 factors of samadhi gather together and are present. And your mind, your mental energy gathers inwards, but only for a brief period, and then you come out of that samadhi, or that samadhi is only for a short period. That's what they call momentary or kanika samadhi. But still, when you experience that, you have some peace, the 5 hindrances have faded, you can already practice some vipassana, contemplate the impermanence of physical, mental phenomena from that. Upajara samadhi, the 5 factors of samadhi gather together, you've cultivated, developed them, but usually for a longer period of time. And you have usually maybe a bit more rapture and happiness arises stronger, so it lasts longer. And actually, most vipassana is practiced with what we would call upajara samadhi, because at that point you can still sense your body, feelings, thoughts and mental states arising. From Upajjhara Samadhi, which is more access or neighborhood concentration, the practitioner will usually continue developing their ability with maintaining mindfulness and making their mind firmer in samadhi so that they may experience deeper states of jhana. Because Upajjhara is access into the jhanas. But in jhana you can't contemplate. You can experience the peace, the depth of peace of first or second or third or fourth jhana. Fourth jhana is the crown, the tops of jhanas, because it's pure equanimity. But the way we're trained is to practice vipassana, to develop insight into the impermanent nature of these five khandhas, to see them as suffering, see them as not self, to see them as conditioned things. You need to withdraw from jhana. When you withdraw from jhana, you experience what you would call Upajjhara Samadhi. So samadhi, where the mind is still, but it can still think, experience, but the mindfulness is still strong. And Upajjhara Samadhi coming out of first jhana, very strong, better than Upajjhara Samadhi of someone who hasn't attained jhana. Upajjhara Samadhi after withdrawing from fourth jhana is best of all, because the purity of equanimity, purity of mindfulness is so strong and so clear, then the mind can contemplate anything, you could say, any phenomena, physical, mental, from a place of equanimity and see them as they are, impermanent, as not self. But as we're practicing, many people haven't attained jhana, but it doesn't matter. You attain as much samadhi as you can. You maintain mindfulness as strongly as you can, as continuously as you can. And when the mind is more calm, you contemplate. You might say practice vipassana. So it's really about practice. And as you practice, you get deeper. You get deeper into it. Your mindfulness and samadhi improve, become stronger. Your wisdom, discernment becomes clearer. It's just like, say, somebody learning to compete at running, sprinting. The first time they practice it, they've got a time, one time. So you do 100 meters, maybe the first time you run, you only get 13 seconds to run 100 meters. So you keep practicing, and you reduce your time to 12 seconds, 11 seconds, 10 seconds. By the time you can run 100 meters in 10 seconds, you'll be competing in the Olympics. But that comes from practice, doesn't it? And you just have to accept where you're at. We were talking earlier about barami, so we've all got some barami, otherwise we wouldn't be here. So don't be too hard on yourself. You've already done many good things, you've already attained good things so far, but there's more to do. And it's about practice and improving mindfulness. And mindfulness, samadhi, wisdom, and sila, these qualities of the path all work together. So they talk about the path as a wheel or a circle. And the spokes of the wheel are the 8 factors of the path. So as you improve your mindfulness, your sila improves. You're more careful what you say and what you do. As your sila and your samadhi improve, your wisdom improves. You understand better what is a mental defilement that should be abandoned, what are the qualities you need to cultivate. You're quicker to abandon mental defilements because your mindfulness and your wisdom improve. So obviously somebody who's attained fourth jhana, their mindfulness will be very strong, very sharp, very clear, and that will support very deep insight. So that's the best of all. But it doesn't mean to say you can't practice when you just have a little bit of samadhi. You can. And you just work with what you've got.
Thanks for this declaration. Yesterday you mentioned that if you see that this lifetime you cannot be liberated. And consider that as a mental defilement. We wouldn't be enlightened this lifetime and consider that as a mental defilement. I mean, it's
you mean the view? You might hold the view that it's impossible or I can't do it.
I can't do that. Can we look at it in a more positive manner? Because in Singapore we have this saying I don't have enough runway or the plane of liberation to land, so I know that I can't make it this lifetime. So let's have a more intermediate goal, for example, whether we this or that. That's the most achievable goal that trying to be liberated, rather than saying I can't be liberated, therefore it's a mental defilement.
Well, it's like the Buddha's cousin, isn't it? There was one monk who was having a lot of doubts about his practice, and he thought, I just can't do it. It's too hard, too difficult to meditate and practice this vipassana. It's too difficult. So he's thinking of giving up. And the Buddha picked him up and said, look, you really can progress in your practice, but you have to be patient and you have to take it one step at a time. And the Buddha showed him the heaven realms and showed him what happiness he would achieve if he was reborn in the heaven realm. All the beautiful women, the nice food, the nice house, all the things that he would get. So at first he thought, oh, well, that sounds good, maybe I'll keep practicing. So he didn't disrobe, so that's already a victory. And then practicing, hoping to get this heavenly reward. But then of course his friends, the other monks, all laughed at him and said, you just want to practice for this heavenly reward, you're hopeless, you're just doing it because you want all this pleasure. So they made fun of him and teased him, and he felt embarrassed and he felt ashamed. He's like, oh, they're right. I should really be practicing for Nibbana. But he's a monk. If you're a monk, that's what you're ordaining for, to practice for Nibbana. So he went off and redoubled his efforts. He tried harder and he attained Nibbana. So probably the Buddha could see that, because the Buddha can see people's barami and their accumulated good karma. So he could see, well, this guy has great potential, but he has a few obstacles. So sometimes you have to almost like induce yourself, give yourself a little boost by saying, okay, well, if I don't get Nibbana yet, at least I get a nice heavenly rebirth, okay. Step along the way, give yourself that boost, but then later you'll realize this is not true happiness. Nibbana is better, so you can let go of that aspiration for heavenly rebirth and you move on to aspiring to Nibbana. And we have to accept practice is like step by step up a mountain or up a ladder or going higher. And sometimes you have to accept you can't yet reach the top. You're just working at the next step up, the next goal is the next step up. So it works in both ways. You have your aspiration for Nibbana, letting go of all mental defilements. But also your immediate aspiration is just to let go of the current mental defilements arising right here, right now, today. That's what you're working with.
Four questions, one in each section.
Maybe just one at a time.
Where does our inner wisdom come from? I'm asking because our knowledge or wisdom comes from our experiences, teachings, etc.
They can't hear. So anyway, the question was, where does our inner wisdom come from? So the Buddha talked about kind of three depths of wisdom. It's Suttamaya Panya. Can you hear me? Still soft. It's being turned down too far. We're finding the middle way with sound, not too loud, not too soft. So wisdom, we have Sutta Maya Panya. So this is Sutta Maya Panya, me teaching, giving you some encouragement and explanation. This is words of Dhamma, wisdom, knowledge. Reading Dhamma books, reading the Tripitaka, reading Dhamma books, listening to talks, discussion. This is how we absorb wisdom in the beginning, the knowledge from the teachers and from the Buddha. The second depth or second level of wisdom is Jintamaya Panya. So you take what you've heard and you've remembered and you contemplate it, you think about it, you try and understand it internally. You have to make sense of it, you have to make sense of all these terms and descriptions of the practice. You know, we've been talking about samadhi, we've been talking about sila. You know, there's lots of terms you have to think, well, what is sila, what is samadhi, what is wisdom? So you're making sense of it and understanding it and remembering it in your mind. And this is training your thinking power, your intellect, so you can start lining up the concepts, the ideas, for your own benefits. You understand better what you've heard, now you understand the way. You get a new washing machine and the guy delivers it and he'll give you a whole host of instructions. Oh, you do this, you press this button, you press that button. And you go, oh, okay, and off he goes. And you're like, So then you get out the instruction book and you read it one more time. Okay, now I'm thinking about it, you press this button, okay. So this is Jintamaya Panya, you're making sense of what you've heard. But this is still not enough to actually cut off defilement really. It can sort of prepare you for that, gives you right view and right understanding. But the next step of wisdom is what we call Bhavana Maya Panya. So that's why we're practicing mindfulness, turning our attention inwards to observe our own body, our own thoughts and feelings, what we call myself. But with mindfulness, you're observing in a way that we say is detached. So really the word Ajahn Kalyano uses is Sikhi Buddha, it's like witnessing your experience of thoughts, feelings, physical body. You're observing it from mindfulness, from a place of clarity, peace. And you may observe without thinking very much at all, because you've done the thinking, you've already thought things through and heard the Dhamma. When you're meditating, you can actually afford to let go of all the thoughts and the memories, and now you're just watching, observing. But you need the mindfulness to do that. You try and watch your mind or watch this body. If there's no mindfulness, you can do it for 2 seconds. And then you get lost in a train of thought, or fall asleep, or obstacles come along. But if you're training in mindfulness, there'll be periods where you actually are more calm, your mindfulness is clear, you can see thoughts arising and ceasing, you can observe sensations in this body, you can investigate, and then that gives rise to a better or deeper kind of wisdom, where you're seeing impermanence in your experience, you're seeing a thought arise and pass away, feelings, pleasant, unpleasant feelings arise, pass away. You can investigate the body and see body is impermanent. All these things we say are impermanent, they're also not self, because they arise and pass away according to different causes and conditions. And as you're more mindful, you can see that. And that gives rise to a real purifying insight, Bhavana Maya Panya, which helps you to let go of your wrong views, your attachments, your delusions, greed, anger, because you're seeing things as they are. So that's the wisdom we're aiming for in the practice. It comes through the meditation, through developing mindfulness, and it's, you call it inner knowing of the way things are. And it's not just remembering what the Buddha said, in the beginning it is, but as we practice, it's actually knowing and seeing as things are.
As such, can we trust our inner wisdom as it can be polluted by misconceptions that arise from the interpretations of our experience and teachings. For example, environment, family, school, and workplace.
Of course, that's always a danger, but the whole point is that if you develop more mindfulness, that has a purifying effect, so you're just seeing things as they are, as opposed to what you believe them to be. So at the beginning we believe things, we believe the Buddha, we believe that body is impermanent, feelings are impermanent. It's a belief, it's a theory that you've taken from the Buddha, but the Buddha didn't say just believe, he said put it to the test, to practice. So you follow the breathing, breathe in, breathe out, your mind and body start to calm down, a thought arises into your awareness, you remember something, or you think of something you want, or you have some feeling of sadness or irritation, but because you're mindful, you can see that thought arise, pass away. Your mind can say, no, that's impermanent. It was there, and it's gone. What's impermanent is not the same thing as the mind that knows it. The mind knows impermanence, but that thought or that feeling that arose and passed away is not the same thing, is it? The separation, it's like a visitor to your mind and it passes away. So that knowledge is very pure. Of course, there's always a chance for some delusion to slip into your thinking, so you have to keep looking, keep learning from experience. So people will still even attach to samadhi. You feel very peaceful, and then you say, oh, this peace is mine. And if the peace fades away, then you get upset. Oh, I'm not so peaceful as I was last week, or something. So even samadhi we can attach to, even some aspects of knowledge we can attach to with a sense of subtle self, subtle conceit, we call it. But if you keep practicing mindfulness and investigating to see the impermanent nature even of that subtle conceit, then after a while it dissolves, doesn't it? It's just a thought, just a sense of self that arises, passes away. It's not anything permanent, lasting. So a lot of the practice is investigating and observing the way things are, putting the Buddha's words to the test, or proving whether they're true or not. He didn't say just believe, you have to look and learn for yourself.
How should lay people live their lives such that there is meaning and purpose, especially for people who are feeling lost or directionless like me? Thank you.
I would say the simple answer is practice the Dhamma, like you're doing right here. Stay close to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha in whatever way you can. So close in your thinking and your heart, close in your lifestyle. So stay close to the Sangha, stay close to wholesome activities. So practice dharma, generosity, charity, help people who do good things. Try to follow the 5 precepts. Listen to the Dhamma regularly. Learn how to meditate and do your best, the best you can with this. And you'll find that as your mind draws close to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, that does give meaning to your life, brings you a lot of happiness, and you develop a lot of good karma and understanding, which will help you to deal with any feelings of loneliness or feeling lost. For many meditators, they reach a point where they still may have a feeling of sadness or loneliness or feeling lost arise in their mind, but now they know how to meditate. They can watch and this is still just a feeling. It arises, passes away, it will pass, won't it? You don't feel lonely and lost all day long. It comes and goes. And then you get some higher understanding. You go, oh, okay, sometimes I feel a bit lonely, but it's just a feeling. It comes, it goes. And the more you can see it, the more mindful you see it as it is, then it will come up less and less. the same with grief, same with anguish, all the different mental states we call suffering. As you meditate more, you can see them as they are. They're passing mental states that, if you're not very mindful, of course, you'll indulge them, you hold on to them, and they may get stronger and more overwhelming. But if you keep practicing the opposite, they'll come up less often and they'll be less strong, they'll fade away quicker. And your mind will feel more free, more happy, and then you've got more space to help other people and do good things in your life. Your life takes on better meaning.
This is a slightly longer question. In the spirit of Buddhism, what might it mean to be averse to my partner's command of language? It is something I have struggled with for a year and a half. Is it skillful or unskillful for me to stay in this relationship and set aside my desire for a partner with whom I can discuss ideas deeply with in practice of non-self? Is my trying to hold on to the good I see in him and the struggle to love beyond social inequality increasing my dukkha? And how can I use this as an opportunity to grow as a person?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? I don't know who the person is or their background, but relationships are imperfect, aren't they? Because two people are never going to think exactly the same. They're never going to want to do exactly the same thing. We get tired of each other, but then we feel lonely, so we want to come back together again. We get tired of each other. And it's an imperfect thing. So the Buddha said with relationships, partners, you try to pick somebody who has an equal level of sila. They also don't want to hurt other people or harm other people. They have equal faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. So if you have some similar qualities, then maybe you can live together and support each other in doing good, rather than being together and being enemies and always arguing and fighting. And so, try and pick a partner who supports your practice, at least they tolerate your practice. Because there's a lot of suffering in the world, we see it all the time. One partner is Buddhist and the other is not, and so they're always getting annoyed that the Buddhist one is meditating or practicing Dhamma, doing all these good things, and all they get is criticism. It's not a very nice way to live, is it? If there's a little bit of that, you may have to put up with it, but if it's always happening, it's very difficult. So you try and pick a partner ahead of time and plan your relationships. The trouble is, because of our villages, we don't usually plan so well, then we just fall into a relationship, fall in love, and then you have to work out how to live together. So I'm not a very good marriage counselor. I'm single. What can I say? Just do the best you can to be patient with your partner, try and build some understanding, try and get them to see the value of what you're doing. And they may not, they can be a silent Buddhist. So you do all the meditation and Dhamma, and they just say it's okay, you go off to the temple and do your meditation. They don't do it, they can be a silent Buddhist, that's better than nothing. But remember, one day, your practice, eventually you're going to get to the point where you're going to have to make a decision to go for Nibbana or for your partner. It's inevitable, but maybe not this lifetime. Maybe in a future lifetime you'll be like Mahakassapa, his stories. And before he was married, he was a good-looking young man from a good family with lots of land and property, and his parents wanted him to have a beautiful wife. Old India, they want to arrange the marriage to get the best possible matching wife for him. And he kept saying they'd bring women round for him. He said, no, not good enough, because he didn't want to get married, because he aspired to practice Dhamma. So he kept pushing her away. No, not her. No, she's not good enough. Must have been very hard on the women. Anyway, in the end the parents said, no, we're going to get you a wife. He said, okay, she's got to look like this. So they made a statue of a beautiful woman, and he said, whoever you pick for me has to look like this, because he thought they'd never find her, and then he'd be free. But off they went, they sent all their people out into all the different states and provinces with this statue to try and find a beautiful woman, and they found one. They brought her back. And the strange thing was, she had spent her life trying not to get married, just like Mahakassapa. She'd been telling her parents, no, I don't want to get married, I want to practice Dhamma. And they said, oh, don't be silly, don't be silly. You need a husband, you need to do the usual thing, have a husband, have kids. So they brought them together, and eventually they go, okay, we'll get married, keep our parents happy, because parental pressure is like that, you want to keep them happy. So they come together on the first night, they come together and they sit down and they say, look, I don't want to be a husband, I don't want to be a wife, and they agreed, they both wanted to ordain. So, on their bed they put a row of flowers, and they said, we're never going to cross this row of flowers. So they never had sexual relations, they kept celibate, even though on the outside it seemed like they were married, keep everybody happy, but inside they're both like a monk or a nun, and that was their higher aspiration. So when the time was right, they set aside all the business, made sure it was all looked after, and they hadn't got kids, so then off they went to become a monk and a nun. They reached the crossroads and they'd been living together, and shaved their head, put on the robes, left home. But then they think, we can't go together, husband and wife, into the same monastery. It's not going to work, is it? We might as well stay at home. So at the crossroads, they went separate ways. Mahakassapa found the Buddha first. He became a monk, he saw the Buddha sitting under a tree. And the Buddha knew, Mahakassapa, he's got a lot of RME, this is somebody important. So the Buddha goes, and out comes the radiance of his Japantaransi aura, the rainbow aura of the Buddha. Sometimes you see a Buddha statue with a rainbow aura around. That's the mind of the Buddha, it's a rainbow mind. It can impress anybody because it's got all this parami. So I showed Mahakassapa the rainbow aura, and Mahakassapa bows, and this is my teacher. His wife went off later, she became a bhikkhuni, so they both became enlightened. So they had to separate them. You can't get enlightened together, it doesn't work. So, you marry and your partner supports you and you support them, of course, up to a point. But when you come to meditate, you close your eyes, you're also learning to be independent in your meditation, aren't you? You can't be thinking about your partner in your meditation, and that's the tricky one. And then if you've got kids, so today we talked about the 5 khandhas. We've got 5 khandhas: body, feelings, perceptions, thought formation, sense consciousness. That's 5 khandhas. That's a lot of work for one vipassana practitioner. You get married and it's 10 khandhas. Double trouble. You have 3 kids, 15 more khandhas in there, it's 25 khandhas to deal with. You're already struggling with your 5 khandhas, so imagine you've got 2 or 3 kids, you've got so many khandhas, you just give up, don't you? You live the family life, after a while you go, it's too difficult. Because of the khandhas, there's too many khandhas around. But maybe your kids grow up and then they're more independent, so then you feel more relaxed. Slightly older, so then maybe you can practice a bit more. But when they're young, 1 year old, running around, don't bother about meditation. Your kid is your meditation. So if you have kids, it's great. You can make some good karma looking after your kids. But maybe keep your aspiration when you're 45, 50 years old, then you can really get into the meditation. Again, when you're 30 with 2 young kids, it's going to be difficult. So that becomes your focus, just looking after the kids. So, maybe we'll leave the questions there for now. We can always pick them up again later or tomorrow.